Right, so what is just-in-time data governance? A common method of the way that schools or any organization likes to implement data governance is the first thing they do is they set up their stewardship organization, they create a committee, and they get together to meet, you know, once every 2 weeks or once a month. And when they do that, maybe they say, maybe they, depending on how they prioritize that list that we talk about, maybe they say, we're gonna start with data definitions. And they might hypothetically go through the list of data definitions and discuss them as a group and fill them out on a piece of paper and move from there, right? And so that is probably one of the least efficient ways to execute data governance that there is. But no, you know, apologies to the committee itself. Like the stewards and the committee is appropriate, but the committee and the meeting, that's not the right way to actually develop content or even discuss content. You have 20 data stewards across your whole organization, and you're discussing a data definition that either 1 or 2 people need to interact with. So it's just not very efficient. So the purpose of a committee, if you're going to set this up, should be to talk about what are our processes and what are our goals and how do we get buy-in, and is there anything sort of stuck or, you know, oversight essentially and feedback. But the actual day-to-day actions of data governance shouldn't be done in this boardroom, right? It needs to be done as part of the projects. So I like to say to think about data governance like you at an institution might think about advising, right? So you don't take all of your advisors and stick them in a room and talk hypothetically about the students, right? Instead, you know, they're out there, they're available when the students need questions. So if either maybe you've identified a need to intervene for a student, or they've come to you for help and advice, and the advisor now who's playing the role of the steward here can interact and help them through that process. So the stewardship is occurring with your advisors. There is some process with which that person who, as they're engaging in a decision making, is able to interact with the steward. There is content in a knowledge base like a catalog, or maybe on a website or whatever, that is hopefully updated fairly regularly, that can serve as a starting point, and then if not, escalation to a steward to ask questions. There's completeness. There's, you know, some effort to make sure that that catalog is accurate and up to date and updated with every new catalog year. And then lastly, there's adoption, that the student understands how to, you know, where to find the catalog and how to contact their steward and who their steward is and all those kinds of things. And they use the system. So most of you at an institution have gone through a lot of effort to make sure that you're implementing advising, and there's wonderful lessons there to think about that as you think about stewardship. So if you think of your data stewards as advisors or helpers for the people who are trying to interact with your data, and model that for maybe the way that you do advising, that's a very helpful method. So when you think about that, the just-in-time component becomes really important, right? If there is someone who is trying to make a critical decision about what classes to take, they can't do that, you know, after the census date. You know, they have to make that decision during the registration or ad drop period, right? And they need to find the person who gives them the right answers when they need it. So just-in-time data governance is, you know, as you're doing sort of data processing on your campus, you know, when people are asking questions and answering them, there's a whole bunch of decisions and knowledge and know-how that's being generated from each answer. So the question is governance part of that process, right? Is the steward, is there advising happening? Is there review or approval happening? And if you think about governance occurs at this point of the questions being asked and not outside of that, it'll help. So governance is not a project. It's not something that you sit around and fill out a binder and say you're done. It should be a simple or small part of all the day-to-day tasks. So just-in-time data governance is a pragmatic approach to implementing data governance directly into your existing processes. Right? So how do you incorporate governance into your day-to-day job?